Let's start with the Hobby Lobby case. Then we'll go to Harris versus Quinn, and I also want to talk about immigration reform this evening. First of all, the Supreme Court we talked about it in the previous segment, the Supreme Court ruled today in a case called Hobby Lobby versus Burwell that the closely held companies, which I assume means something like family-owned companies, are not required to cover contraceptives in the healthcare packages they offer their female employees. Mark, what's your take on the decision?
Well, I think, unfortunately, I'm not greatly surprised due to the fact that, the Supreme Court already ruled on Citizens United, basically saying that corporations are people. This is something that a lot of people warned that this Supreme Court would do, and Citizens United wasn't just about that case, but it was going to start to affect a lot of other things. If you say that a corporation is a person, then they're arguing that it should have people's rights, and one of the rights that people have in this country are religious freedom. So as asinine as that sounds, I think they're being consistent. Now, are they correct? Absolutely not. This is the exact opposite of what they're saying they do, is that corporations are people and people should have individual religious rights. Well, if you're really concerned about that, you're doing the exact opposite, because you're now saying that the actual employees, the real people, do not have their rights, because you're infringing upon them by one person or a couple people who own the corporation can now say, you know what? This is my religious beliefs. This is how I'm going to run your health care. This is how I'm going to restrict your health care, not just, tell you what to do, but I'm also going to tell you what you can't do, and I'm going to take away your birth control, which, another thing that I think is not being talked about enough is birth control is not only used for sex. Birth control has many other benefits for women, and it helps regulate different things with women's health. So you're basically taking away their health care options, and the fact that it's so disproportionately affects one sex, which is unfortunately females, who already are at such a huge disadvantage in our society. I think this honestly just, piles on to, a sex that is already greatly disadvantaged in this country. Already financially, women, it's been documented, make 70 cents on the dollar that men do for the same exact work that they put in. This is just another strike against women. And I, personally, it upsets me already, but, I just found out recently, actually, that my wife and I are expecting our first child, and I'm going to have a daughter. So I now look at this through a whole different lens, and I can start to picture, okay, not just how does this affect my wife, but how is this going to affect my child as she grows old enough to, have birth control and have certain options. Now you have, it's hard enough to find a job. Now you're going to have to pick and choose companies that you're going to have to find out, are they going to push their religious rights on you? I can't believe that this is happening in 2014 in America.
Julie, do you want to weigh in?
Yeah, I mean, sadly, there's plenty of dimensions that make this situation even worse. The first being the fact that about a third of Americans are already not eligible for contraceptive coverage from their employees, because it's we have small employers, don't have to offer health insurance. Religious employers like churches are exempt. Religiously affiliated groups can claim that exemption. So we're talking about a third on top of just these companies that are not providing health care. And then, lay on top of that the fact that most of these places do cover Viagra. And apparently at one point, Hobby Lobby did cover contraception, and then they removed that. And just to give you a sense of, a lot of people like to argue, condoms are very cheap. I mean, not only condoms are not the only form of contraception, but I mean, this is partly why we've seen such a dramatic reduction in teen pregnancy and in the rate of abortions, with wider access to contraception. So now, I mean, I'm pretty sure, I think you can expect to see maybe even a spike in abortion. And then, if you want to really think about how expensive some of these items are, an IUD would cost a woman who's making minimum wage a full month of her salary. It's a full month of her salary going nothing but to an IUD. So it's really just more than condoms. It's healthcare needs, and it's affecting so many people around the country. It's just a shameful day in our history.
Okay. We've already got several tweets on the subject, so let me read one of them, and the panel can comment. This is from Paul O'Brien. He writes, the companies aren't denying anyone contraception. They just don't want to pay for it due to moral reasons. Julie, you want to weigh in on to Paul?
Sure. So let's look at this case factually, objectively. The reason why companies felt they had a moral or religious cause is that they were considering certain forms of contraception to be an abortifacient, meaning they believed it would cause an abortion. It is an absolute fact, not science, not opinion, a fact, that if you are already pregnant, the morning after pill will not work. And so we now also have a Supreme Court that isn't acknowledging even basic science, so that the whole moral clause is removed. If there's financial implications, there's discrimination here. It's beyond words.
Okay, I have another tweet here from Proud Infidel, who writes, watch liberal heads explode today. Was fun. Okay, let's go to our caller, Michael in the Bronx. Michael, how are you doing today?
Hi, Brad. Hello, everybody. I guess I'm pretty.
Was your head explode today? Did your head explode today?
I'm sorry?
Did your head explode today?
No, thank God. If it exploded, I wouldn't be talking to you right now. I'll be picking up the pieces, as the old song from Average White Band. But nonetheless, I want to take a turn and lay a major smackdown on these 5 Supreme Court jerks or jackasses or justices, whatever the hell you want to call them, all right? And as far as these right-wingers are concerned, because there's 2 areas that we got to be concerned with. Number one, and I believe one of your guests had pointed out about the medical purposes. As we remember, the case was Sandra Fluke. She was a spokesperson for a fellow college classmate who had an unusual illness that is only affected in or found in females that was non-sexually related. Okay, and she needed the contraceptives to be healed of this stuff. So we have a clear case for those that want to talk about pro-life, that apparently contraceptives may very well save a woman's life from perhaps a very fatal illness. So nice going, right-wingers, and nice going, Supreme Court jerks. You call yourselves pro-life, but then you just handed down a ruling that could mean death for a lot of these young ladies. And the second thing I want to point out, and really just debuff their claim of religious conscientious, if I can call it that, let's remind everybody last year, and probably will happen again this year, that these corporations got nothing to do with being religious conscientious, because these are the same corporations that denied their employees to be with their loved ones on Thanksgiving and especially Christmas, forcing the stores and so forth.
That's right. That's a good point, actually, that you bring up, Michael, because they claim to have this moral high ground, and then really what they worship, honestly, a lot of the time is not a god. It's the almighty dollar. I think when you look at where their goals are or what they say they really care about, it's not very consistent. And I think it's very valid to bring up, then why is it okay, like someone brought up on Twitter, Brad was talking about, why is it okay for men to have Viagra? Why is it okay for men's health care to cover vasectomies? I mean, why is it okay for one sex to have, these rights and as part of their health care, but not for another sex? Unless the answer is because the Supreme Court is being sexist, then I don't really see what the actual answer is to this equation. I just think there's no other way around it.
Tired of spending $1 a song? Spend less than $5 a month and have Leslie year-round. Go to LeslieMarshallShow.com/members.
We are back for hour 3 of the Leslie Marshall Show. This is Brad Bannon. I'm subbing for Leslie tonight. In this hour, we have our political roundtable. Joining us on the roundtable tonight are progressive media strategist Julie Karant and our own executive producer Mark Grimaldi. The Supreme Court didn't get much attention because of all the attention on the Hobby Lobby case, but the Supreme Court issued a second ruling today in a case called Harris versus Quinn. Julie, why don't you explain what the Harris versus Quinn case was all about?
Well, there were home care workers from Illinois are partly public. They're now considered not real workers, but part-time, partly real workers, in that they were both public workers and private. And these are the workers who live in-house with disabled patients, and they care for them. They deal with all sorts of bodily fluids and have really, really tough jobs. I will add that this workforce is predominantly overwhelmingly female, and it's overwhelmingly minority, African American and Latino. And they made so little. They were before the union, before SEIU came in, they were making just, $1, $6 an hour, and they were brought up to $13 an hour. And then, of course, the irony that these workers don't themselves have health care. And the Supreme Court today decided that they do not have to share in the burden of bargaining for these rights, and they don't have to pay union membership dues, which is obviously how we are able to get workers good contracts and wages. It's a shared responsibility, and essentially they consider, because these workers are in the home, they believe the home is not a workplace, and thus they are not considered fully public employees. And so on one hand, this is obviously a blow to an already vulnerable population. It's also one of the top two growing workforces. It's one of the fastest growing employment sources in America, and the number of seniors who are going to be relying on their care is exploding. And we know that it is proven time and time and again through research that quality, that the wages and benefits that a worker make are directly linked to quality. So if you pay workers more, the quality of care they're able to provide is better. And when you pay workers less and less and treat them terribly, you have a high turnover, and that means a lower quality of services. So today is a big loss for the disabled community, for seniors, and for women and low-wage workers. So the upside is that this is not as bad as it could have been. This is just a narrow workforce, and it's not. They could have easily dismantled all public unions by saying that none of these workers had to bargain, that it's really actually not as bad as it could have been.
So if I'm getting this right, essentially these workers can enjoy all the benefits of the union provides in terms of salary increases and benefits, but they don't have to pay any dues to the union. Is that correct?
That's right, and so they don't. So that means other workers will have to bear the brunt, and it also means, if you have less people sharing the burden, then your chances for a better contract might be less. But again, this is not going to stop workers. This is not going to stop workers from organizing. Home care workers are still going to fight for better wages and benefits. They've had to be creative over the years because it's such a tough industry, and no single court case is going to stop them.
Okay. Mark, you want to weigh in Harris versus Quinn?
I think Julie makes some good points on the specific case itself. I am relieved that they did not, deal a bigger blow to unions, but I think this is just a larger part of the narrative of this Supreme Court where, and the current basically political environment versus workers and versus unions. You saw it previously in Wisconsin where Governor Walker eliminated the right for workers to collectively bargain. Now you see the Supreme Court dealing this blow to unions, and I think you can argue that this current work environment, unions are needed more than I would say in the last, few decades, because as corporations grow larger and basically, squeeze more productivity out of their workforce, they have a lot more leeway to, basically act in their own self-interests, and they're not too concerned about their employees, a lot of them. And I think unions are the one refuge that a lot of workers have. And, I mean, the unions brought us, even if you're not in a union yourself, unions brought us the 40-hour work week, a lot of other benefits that have helped us, throughout our working lives. I think one of the things that unions also help with is when a company knows that a workforce is unionized, it's not just the rights that they fight for, it's also, I think, that they already know that they can only do so much that will affect their workers before their workers will then take the power of that union and react. So I think in a broader way, this is another blow to unions and people who want to organize. Now, I think Julie makes a good point in which, this industry is, a lot of disabled people and elderly people rely on this industry. And unfortunately, those are the most vulnerable people in our population, and this is going to negatively affect them. So it's frustrating and it's upsetting. But, and the other thing I think that's very frustrating about these Supreme Court decisions is you can't vote these people out. They make these decisions, and then we really don't have much recourse for a long time as to what we can do about them. All we can hope for is that when the next Supreme Court justice either retires or passes away, that there is a Democratic president in office so that, they can appoint them to the Supreme Court. I wanted to go back, Brad. We have a caller, Michael from Long Island, that wanted to comment on the Hobby Lobby case, and I wanted to get to him and let him make his comments and see what you and Julie thought. So we're going to bring Michael on. Michael's called before and is a good caller. Michael, go ahead and with your thoughts. Let us know what you're thinking.
Hi, Michael. How are you?
Good, Brad. How are you?
Oh, just fine. What do you want to say about the Hobby Lobby case?
I actually was supportive of the Supreme Court decision, but what I wanted to share with your listeners was just that Hobby Lobby is not some narrow-minded group, I think has been portrayed by some in the media today. They actually provide, I believe, 16 forms of contraceptives to their employees. What they were opposed to was providing their employees with abortifacients, drugs that might result in the termination of the pregnancy. And
can I jump in there?
Sure, Julie.
There's no doctor or scientist. They're not. The morning after pill will not work if you are already pregnant. Literally, you will deliver your baby to term. That's how you know. It's pretty simple. It's as good as the sun will come up in the morning. Those are not abortificants. Those are just words. That's zero science to that. So that's a false premise that those are abortificants. So those are lies. Period.
Oh, I
Michael?
disagree respectfully. I disagree respectfully.
It's not. It's a scientific fact. You can have your own opinion, but it doesn't match science or fact.
There are over-the-counter solutions now that will result in a termination, and I think people of, listen, everybody is entitled to their beliefs, but no more than we would impose.
No. You're denying science. You have a belief that's not in line with actual science. So it's like saying that the Earth is flat.
Liberals are citing science right now ad hominem all the time. It's science is in charge of the weather. We have weather issues. We have climate change is a name now that we've got out there to raise awareness for an issue that is a false premise.
So you just think. Well, I'm glad you said that because now we all know where you're coming from. It's not from the scientific background. So, okay.
I think it's been about 50 million abortions since the Supreme Court decision, and there are many Americans who are upset because they know somehow their tax dollars are supporting this, and it's alleged that there's as many as 2 million couples who would love to adopt a child. So I don't know.
Sure. Well, okay. I would like them all. They should be lining up at these clinics and adopting. That's amazing. Why are there not people lining up at Planned Parenthood clinics waiting to adopt
I agree with you more.
babies that women are trying?
Michael, let me ask you a question.
Sure.
Do you think it's fair that the Green family that owns Hobby Lobby is able to deny, essentially impose their religious beliefs on their employees?
Well, I think that question is carefully crafted. Let's turn that the other way around.
No. Let's answer Michael. Let's answer the. No, let's. Okay, Michael, please answer my question. Do you think it's?
I just want you to see that if you pose.
Do you think it's fair for the Green family to impose their religious beliefs on their employees? Yes or no?
Yeah. Well, no. I believe that they have the right to express their right.
Okay, but do they have? That's not the question I asked, Michael. The question I asked: do they have the right to impose their religious beliefs on the people who work for them?
Do liberals have the right to...
Now, Michael, you're not answering I asked you a question. Don't answer a question with a question.
Do secular...
Michael, if you're going to answer a question and he's not going to answer my question, we're not going anywhere with this call. Michael, does the Green family have the right to impose their religious beliefs on their employees? Yes or no? And don't ask me another question. Answer my question.
That's a false premise. Have a good night.
Oh, okay. Good night, Michael. We're going to go to break now. But when we get back from break, we're going to continue our political roundtable with progressive media strategist Julie Karant, and our own executive producer, Mark Grimaldi. And if you're calling, please call. But if I ask you a question, I'll answer your question if you answer mine.
Leslie Marshall, the simple truth in a complicated world. 888-6-LESLIE. Tired of spending $1 a song? Spend less than $5 a month and have Leslie year-round. Go to lesliemarshallshow.com/members.
I take executive action only when we have a serious problem, a serious issue, and Congress chooses to do nothing. And in this situation, the failure of House Republicans to pass a darn bill is bad for our security, it's bad for our economy, and it's bad for our future. While I will continue to push House Republicans to drop the excuses and act, and I hope their constituents will too, America cannot wait forever for them to act. And that's why today I'm beginning a new effort to fix as much of our immigration system as I can on my own, without Congress. As a first step, I'm directing the Secretary of Homeland Security and the Attorney General to move available and appropriate resources from our interior to the border. Protecting public safety and deporting dangerous criminals has been and will remain the top priority, but we are going to refocus our efforts where we can to make sure we do what it takes to keep our border secure.
That, of course, was the president made a statement today on immigration reform. One of the things he said during the press conference was that he had received word from the Speaker of the House, John Boehner, that the House would not vote on an immigration reform bill this year, effectively killing it, at least for this year. Julie, it seems to me that the Republicans are playing with fire here. If you look at what happened in 2012, they got killed by Latino voters. The Latino population is growing, and it's just going to be a worse problem for the Republicans in the next presidential election. And my guess is the GOP stonewalling on immigration reform will probably drive many people, including many Latinos, to the polls in the midterm elections in November. So do you think this is something that will backfire on the Republicans?
It Well, I mean, first of all, I think today is a good sign that the president will take some measures. He had a meeting with 20 immigration leaders, including SEIU's Eliseo Medina, and he has promised to put forward a package, an executive order. It's definitely not going to be anywhere near as comprehensive and as effective as a legislative solution would be, but it is a good start. And I think today is just, while it was very vague on specifics, today is the beginning of that. And even if that's not the case, it just by the pure numbers of growing minority voters, not just Latino but Asian, I mean, Republicans will literally be outnumbered, and they've managed to unite the Chamber of Commerce, labor unions, and Catholic bishops. When do you ever see these groups together? I mean, there's absolutely nobody left on the side against immigration reform except the Tea Party. We've seen where the Tea Party is headed. They're headed to extinction, and so it's just pretty interesting to watch a car crash in slow motion here.
Mark, do you want to weigh in?
I think Julie raises a lot of good points. The other thing that's frustrating about this is if you look at the actual, steps that President Obama is trying to take on immigration reform. He's trying to get more funds to the border to help with security, which is something Republicans say that they support. The other thing he's trying to do is help to deal with these unaccompanied children who are stuck at the border and are having major health problems. They're without their parents. They've come from, in a lot of situations, they've escaped death or, homelessness. So it's not like, these are, hardened criminals or drug dealers. These are kids basically who are, in need of saving. And, the president's not necessarily saying it's our job to save them, but once they're already here and they're already in our country, they are our responsibility to at least either get back to a safe area in their original country if possible, and if that's not possible, which, let's face it, in a lot of these situations it's not possible, then as Americans, and we say we hold the moral high ground, we're willing to send, or export our morals and our form of democracy in the form of war to other countries. Well, here's a perfect example to really show, what we're made of when these, kids are already at our doorstep. The other things that I think, the president has said is this will help to basically fight the drug dealing and the other things that are problems in these countries that the children are fleeing from. So basically the funding that he's asking for are for things that Republicans say they support, but because they're not willing to put their money where their mouth is, he's essentially saying, fine, I'll do it for you. If you want to give me the political heat, I don't care. I'll get the job done. I'll do my job, and I'll do your job as well. And I think it's something that he's basically said. Here's a perfect example. Speaker Boehner, you want to sue me? Well, here's a perfect example. If you don't think I should do this, then send me a bill. So pretty much if Boehner is serious about this, then he'll send him a bill. And the other thing that the president's brought up, which, Brad, I think you and Julie can comment on, I think the president's right. I think if there was a bill brought up in the House, I think enough people in Congress, enough on the right, would support some type of immigration bill, and Boehner knows it, which is why he's not bringing the bill to the floor.
Exactly, especially now that we have, Kevin McCarthy in a higher role.
That's a very good point, actually. And I think, Brad, what do you think about that dynamic?
The reality is, personally, I think John Boehner, if he had it his way, he would have had a vote on some sort of immigration reform bill. It wouldn't be exactly the one the president wants, but actually I think Boehner understands the politics of this thing and how disastrous blocking immigration reform is for the Republican Party. But the problem is he has no control over his caucus. And I think the fate of immigration reform was sealed last week when Eric Cantor bit the dust because he was attacked for even considering the possibility of immigration reform. That's all for us tonight. I want to thank our guests, Mark Grimaldi and Julie Karant. This has been a fascinating discussion. Leslie will be back tomorrow night. I'll be back whenever. Until then, I hope you enjoy the 4th of July and the 4th of July weekend, and don't blow any hands off with firecrackers.
Leslie Marshall, straight and on point. 888-6-LESLIE. Tired of spending $1 a song? Spend less than $5 a month and have Leslie year-round. Go to lesliemarshallshow.com/members.